News of the times. The Ripper fever spreads. The Birtley mutilation murder of 1888. Welcome to News of the Times. In today's episode, we are in Birtley, close to Newcastle, in the northeast of England. It is 1888 and all of England is in terror of an unknown menace stalking the streets of Whitechapel. On the 31st of August, Mary Ann Nichols is found murdered, with the closing of the inquest of her body taking place on September the 24th, 1888. On the very same day of the inquest, 28-year-old Jane Beatmoor is found murdered at the bottom of a railway embankment. It is believed she has been horribly mutilated. Panic quickly spreads across the community and neighbouring villages with the fear that Jack the Ripper is on the move. And in today's further particular story, he travelled to America chasing a better life, only to return to a nightmare. His wife and 5 children starving in a bare room, the furniture gone, the home sold, and the man responsible living with his teenage daughter and sending her into the streets for money. What unfolded in that London courtroom shocked everyone. Seduction, betrayal, prison, and a sinister plan to ruin a family. Another side of life during Victorian times. To our esteemed guests in the drawing room of curiosity. Still here? Dashed decent of you, I must say. Shows real backbone, or a remarkable tolerance for my waffling, what? Anyway, look, if you think you will enjoy this little caper, do be a blick and press the like button. It's frightfully easy, and between us, it keeps the whole shebang ticking along nicely. And if you haven't subscribed yet, good heavens, what an oversight! No time like the present to remedy it, old bean. One simple prod of the finger and you're officially part of the gang. Jolly exclusive too. So do the decent thing, like, subscribe, and let's keep this baddish crime show on the road. And now, let us stroll ever so civilly into murder. Background. Jane Beatmoor, 28 years of age, lived with her mother and father-in-law. At age 28, she would have been considered a spinster. Whether by design or misfortune, we do not know. Jane was spoken of being in delicate health, thereby necessitating frequent visits to Newcastle or Gateshead for treatment. She was known as a nice girl, but not a woman who was intensely social. At home with her mother and stepfather, Jane helped around the house. What neighbours gossiped about was that Jane, despite her age, seemed to have a beau, a young man described as being infatuated with her. William Waddle, 22 years old, worked as a labourer, roughly the same social class as Jane. The two had walked together several times, with Waddle being seen by the neighbourhood as courting Jane. Tall and lanky, Waddle was said to possess surprisingly tremendous strength for his build. The crime. Sometime between the 23rd and 24th of September, Jane went off towards Gateshead Dispensary, as she had done so often in the past, to collect medication. Along the way, she purchased a penny's worth of toffees and stopped by some of the neighbouring farms. At some point on her way home, Jane vanishes. Jane's mother, at home, assumes that Jane has stayed at a friend's house due to the lateness of the hour. The next morning, a miner on his way to work makes a gruesome discovery. From the Liverpool Echo, the 24th of September, 1888. Shocking murder and mutilation at Gateshead. A mysterious crime. A woman named Jane Beatmoor, 28 years of age, was the victim of a horrible murder at Birtley, near Gateshead, sometime between Saturday night and Sunday morning. It appears that she had been in delicate health and had visited the Gateshead dispensary on Saturday to obtain medicine. On her way home, she stopped at several farms, and at about 7:30 in the evening, she left the house of an acquaintance, Mrs. Newell, apparently intending to return home. However, she never arrived. By 11 o'clock, her mother and stepfather became concerned and began searching for her without success, assuming she had spent the night at a neighbour's. Early on Sunday morning, a man named John Fish, on his way to work, discovered Jane's body at the bottom of a railway embankment in a horribly mutilated state. The county police were alerted, and Sergeant Harrison and Sergeant Hutchinson of Birtley quickly arrived on the scene. The body was taken to Birtley and a doctor was summoned. His examination concluded that the woman had been mutilated with a knife. The gruesome nature of the crime caused panic in the district. The murder bore disturbing similarities to the infamous Whitechapel murders in London, raising fears that the killer might have relocated to the north of England. No arrests had been made at the time of reporting. A later telegram confirmed that additional investigations at the scene only underscored the appalling brutality of the crime. Jane Beatmoor had been stabbed 3 times, and once in the body and twice in the face. She was last seen at 8 o'clock on Saturday night, alone. John Fish found her body at about 7:30 the next morning. Evidence at the scene showed signs of a struggle, but no footprints could be traced, suggesting the ground was hard or disturbed. The brutal slaying left the community in shock. Thousands of people visited the area where her body had been found. Police began searching for a man employed at a local ironworks with whom Jane had reportedly been keeping company. He disappeared the night of the murder and had not been seen since. Investigators searched the field where the body was found for a knife or other weapons used in the attack. The position of the corpse indicated she had been seized with sudden alarm, with her hands stretched out and close together. The inquest opened at Chester Street into the murder of Jane Beatmoor, who was discovered dead on Sunday morning at Birtley Fells. It was revealed that the extent of her mutilations were even greater than initially reported. As the news spreads of a young woman being found discarded with mutilations having taken place on the body, police, public and papers all jump to the tremendous fear that Jack the Ripper has moved into the community. The story is picked up nationally, with headlines screaming across the London papers in addition to the regional newspapers. From the Pall Mall Gazette, 24th of September 1888, a parallel to the Whitechapel murders. A young woman named Jane Beatmoor, 28 years old, was brutally murdered at Birtley near Gateshead on Saturday night or early on Sunday morning. She had left home that evening to visit the Gateshead dispensary but never returned. Early Sunday morning, her body was discovered by a miner, John Fish, at the bottom of a railway embankment. Her remains were found in a horribly mutilated state. An inspection revealed that the lower part of her body had been cut open and the abdomen and viscera torn out. She had also suffered cuts to her face. The nature of the crime has thrown the local community into a panic, especially due to its similarities with the Whitechapel murders. This resemblance has fueled speculation that the same murderer, thought to be active in London, may have moved north to continue his killing spree. As of yet, no arrests have been made, and local police are reportedly baffled. Everyone waits to hear the medical assessment. Could this potentially be a continuation of the horrific Ripper crimes of London? The inquest takes place. The medical testimony is gruesome. It would have appeared to have been a frenzied attack. From the Illustrated Police News, the 29th of September 1888, Murder at Birtley, the tragic case of Jane Beatmoor. The dead body of a woman, later identified as Jane Beatmoor, aged 26, was found near Birtley in Durham early on a Sunday morning. The body was discovered lying in a gutter beside the wagonway by a man named John Fish. It was quickly transported to her parents' home and examined by Dr. Galloway, who confirmed the injuries had been inflicted with a sharp instrument. The inquest, opened on Monday by Mr. Coroner Graham, featured testimony from Jane's stepbrother William Savage and John Fish, who had found the body in a mutilated state near the Euston Colliery Railway. A medical examination revealed 3 horrific wounds: a deep gash on the right side of the face, laying bare the lower jaw to the bone, another deep cut below the ear about 12 inches long, and a third most gruesome stab to the abdomen, where the bowel protruded. The assailant had plunged a large knife into her body, attempting first to strike her stomach. When this failed, he delivered the fatal abdominal wound. It is presumed the victim died from a blow to the head, followed by her murderer's attempts to disfigure her body. Jane Beatmoor, highly respectable in the area, had reportedly been in poor health for some time. Such is the fear that the Ripper has moved to a new killing sphere that Scotland Yard becomes involved, and the medical examiner of Annie Chapman is dispatched to see if he can determine if there are any similarities with Jane's killing. With fear gripping the community, some speculated that the murderer might be one of the same individuals responsible for the Whitechapel killings. Inspector Roots of the Criminal Investigation Department and Dr. Phillips, who had previously examined the body of Annie Chapman, were both dispatched to Durham to investigate possible connections. The review of the body confirms that this is not a Ripper killing. Instead, investigations point to William Waddle, her known beau, and the person believed to have been the last person to see Jane alive. From the Illustrated Police News, the 6th of October, 1888. A Newcastle-on-Tyne correspondent says, on Monday afternoon, a telegram was received at Gateshead by Police Superintendent Harrison, stating that William Waddle, who had been sought by the police in connection with the murder and mutilation of Jane Beatmoor, Birtley Fell in North Durham on Saturday night, September the 22nd, had been apprehended at Yetholm in Roxburgh this morning. On the night when the murder was committed, Waddle called for the young woman at a house where she had been visiting a neighbour, and they were subsequently seen walking along the road towards the house where the deceased lived. On the following morning, the body of Jane Beatmoor was found shockingly mutilated in a field near her house, and Waddle, who had been looked upon as a sweetheart, had disappeared. It was at first believed that he had made his way to Scotland, but after a diligent search, this idea was abandoned. Several times there have been rumours that a man who answered his description had been seen on the road towards Scotland, but there was nothing definite in any of them. It is now known that on Thursday he called at the shop of a cast-off clothes dealer at Berwick and changed the suit he was wearing for another, receiving 5 shillings in addition. To account for his wish to change his clothes, he said he was hard up. His discarded garments have been forwarded to Gateshead, and there are indications that a portion of the coat has been washed. There is a dark stain on the waistcoat, and the clothing has been given to an analyst who will test for blood. From the inquiries that have been made, it is thought that after the tragedy, Waddle walked to Gateshead and crossed to Newcastle. He is then supposed to have gone to Corbridge, near Hexham, where he has a brother living. He was unable to find his brother and must then have gone to Jedburgh, then to Coldstream, and then on to Berwick. After loitering about there for some time, he seems to have made his way to Yetholm, where he was apprehended. He appears to have sustained himself on the road by begging. Waddle is 22 years of age, 5 feet 10 inches high, and is said to possess great physical strength. The apprehension of the man Waddle at Yetholm has given great satisfaction in this district. The news that Jane's killer may have been apprehended brings considerable relief to the community. It also draws large crowds, with some persisting in the hoped-for belief that this is indeed Jack the Ripper, or perhaps a Ripper copycat. From the Illustrated Police News, the 6th of October, 1888. The prisoner Waddle, who is charged with the murder at Birtley, which created so great a sensation a week ago on account of its similarity to the Whitechapel murders, arrived at Gateshead shortly before 10 o'clock on Tuesday morning. Although the night crowds had collected at railway stations and other places in order to catch a glimpse of him, very few succeeded, as the police got him into the Mary Street suburban station and conveyed him by cab to Gateshead. Shortly before noon he was brought before the magistrates. Superintendent Harrison gave notice of his arrest, adding that when charged with wilful murder, the prisoner merely said yes. The prisoner, he said, appeared to be 22, was really a pitiable object. The magistrates remanded him for 8 days and ordered that he should next be brought up at Chesterley Street. There is a mountain of evidence against Waddle. His known relationship with Jane, and having been the last person known to see her alive, the tracing of his movements on that fateful night, his subsequent vanishing, looked at as guilty evidence of a crime. The blood found on the clothes he had been wearing, the insistence of trading in his clothes for other clothes, although he claimed himself to be hard up, and a long list of witnesses came forward having confirmed seeing him on the fateful day with Jane. The inquest comes forward with a wilful murder charge against Waddle. William Waddle will go on to trial. From the Newcastle Daily Chronicle, the 30th of November, 1888. Durham Winter Assizes. The Birtley Fell Tragedy. The trial and conviction of Waddle. At Durham Assizes yesterday, before the Honourable Sir Charles E. Pollock, William Waddle, 22, labourer, was indicted for the wilful murder of Jane Beatmoor, commonly known as Jane Savage, at the township of Birtley on the 22nd of September last. The prisoner, who is a slightly built man and looked in very much better condition than when charged before the magistrates, pleaded not guilty to the charge in a low, firm tone of voice. After the jury was sworn, the prisoner was accommodated with a seat in the dock. There was great interest manifested in the case, and the court was crowded throughout the day. On the application of Mr. Stevenson, all the witnesses in the case, who were stated to be 34 in number, were ordered to remain outside the court till they were called upon. The prosecution case. The prosecution, led by Mr. Stevenson, accused the prisoner of the wilful murder of Jane Beatmoor on the evening of September the 22nd. Waddle, a labourer, had been known to keep company with Beatmoor, and both were of similar social standing. They had frequently met at a location known as Newell's house in Birtley. On the night in question, Jane left her mother's home shortly before 7 p.m, reportedly to visit Newell's. She was later seen purchasing toffee and was at Newell's house at around 7 p.m, with Waddle arriving shortly after. Both left together at around 8 p.m, and witnesses later saw Jane alone on the road. Jane's body was discovered the next morning brutally murdered, stabbed in the neck and the face, with the lower part of her body severely mutilated. Waddle had vanished from the area, giving no notice at work or to his lodgings, despite having duties to return to. In the days following, he was seen under various aliases: Lee, Laws, and finally admitted to being Waddle. His suspicious movements, including travelling as far as Berwick-upon-Tweed, selling his clothes and purchasing a new cap, formed a pattern the prosecution argued was consistent with flight and concealment. Case for the prosecution. Mr. Stevenson, in opening the case, said the prisoner was charged with the wilful murder of Jane Beatmoor, or Jane Savage. They were here treating the matter in the order of time that a week before the woman was murdered, the prisoner exchanged his knife with a man called Fallon. 2 days before the murder, he was looking at the knife, and a man who was in the same house asked him for the knife to cut his nails. That knife, they would appear, was very sharp. On the night of the 22nd of September, the girl, Jane Beatmoor, left the house where she lived with her mother, who was called Mrs. Savage. Hence the girl, who was known by her former husband, was commonly called Jane Savage, although her real name was Jane Beatmoor. About 2 minutes to 7, the girl left her mother's house, and she said something to her mother and went away. She walked along the road, and it would be given in evidence that the next thing that was heard of her was that she purchased a penny's worth of toffee afterwards, walking down to Newell's house at Birtley north side. She was at that house from a little after 7 until about 8, and then the prisoner came in. The jury would hear that the prisoner lodged down at the village. He had been drunk during the day. It was Saturday. He roused himself up at about 7 o'clock and went out of the house in a hurry. He said when he arrived at Newell's that he had run from Laban Hole. The fact that both left their homes about the same time, that they were in the habit of keeping company, and that they arrived at Newell's house about the same time probably pointed to the fact that they had met by appointment. The evidence would show that they were together shortly before the murder. The circumstances will be placed before the jury for their consideration. The prisoner had been seen near the spot where the body was found, and the jury would be asked to come to the conclusion that he was the person who had committed the murder. The prosecution heavily relied on circumstantial evidence, noting that Waddle was seen with Jane shortly before the murder and that he provided false names to authorities when eventually arrested in Yetholm in Scotland. Waddle continued to obscure his identity until confronted further. Forensic evidence presented included bloodstains on Waddle's clothes, on the left cuff, the inside of the trousers, and right-hand pocket, believed by an expert to be human. The prosecution positioned that while the wounds were likely inflicted with the right hand, the left may have held the victim, thus explaining the blood splatter. Although no one witnessed the act, Mr. Stevenson urges the jury to rely on the strength and consistency of circumstantial evidence. He acknowledged the seriousness of the charge, but emphasized their duty not to shrink from a guilty verdict if they found the evidence compelling, even in the absence of direct eyewitness testimony. The defence. Mr. Skidmore, defending William Waddell, began his address to the jury by challenging the strength of the prosecution's case, which he argued was built entirely on weak circumstantial evidence. Although he acknowledged that circumstantial evidence can sometimes be powerful, he insisted that in a case involving a man's life, such evidence must be of the highest and most trustworthy kind. He questioned whether the evidence against Waddell met that standard. Skidmore, for the defence, urged the jury to exercise caution. He warned the jury not to convict unless they believed the evidence was so compelling that no other reasonable explanation was possible. The defence emphasised the absence of any eyewitnesses who could place Waddell at the scene of the crime. Skidmore highlighted Waddell's previously good character and affectionate relationship with the deceased. He rejected the notion that Waddell, if guilty, would have chosen such a visible and familiar location for the crime. The smear of blood on Waddell's clothing, he argued, could have been from a minor cause, such as a bleeding nose, and it did not amount to convincing evidence of guilt. He concluded by pleading with the jury not to send Waddell to his death based on uncertain and incomplete evidence. While the case might be suspicious, suspicion alone, he argued, was not enough to justify a conviction in a capital case. The case seemed quite strong against Waddell, but the defence was also robust. The judge, summing up the evidence, stressed that there were no other viable suspects who had been seen with Jane, although there were over 20 who had seen Waddell and Jane together some few hours before her demise. The jury did not take long to decide. From the Newcastle Daily Chronicle, the 30th of November, 1888, Durham Winter Assizes, the Birtley Fell tragedy, the trial and the conviction of Waddell. The verdict of the jury. The jury retired at 5:05 p.m. and returned into court at 5:35 p.m. The foreman said that the jury found the prisoner guilty. Waddell, whose colour had deepened considerably, the only change to be noted in him, showed not the slightest sign of emotion on hearing the verdict. Not unexpectedly, there was no successful commutation for Waddell. Although there was little doubt that Waddell was not the Ripper of London, yet the horrific injuries sustained by Jane and the fear that had risen up so quickly in the community would not be dispelled. Waddell was executed on the 18th of December, 1888. The Pall Mall Gazette, the 18th of December, 1888, the execution of the Birtley murderer. William Waddell was executed in Durham jail this morning at 8 o'clock for the murder of Jane Beatmoor at Birtley on the 22nd of September. The culprit slept well during the night and walked very firmly to the scaffold. A drop of about 6 feet was given, and death was instantaneous. Berry, who was the executioner, slept in the prison all night. About 100 persons were present when the black flag was hoisted. Further particulars. Another Side of Life from 1888. A father, Mr. Denworth, looking to bring in income to support his family, travels to America, sending money back home. However, whilst he's away, an insidious presence, William Russell, arrives, takes over the family through the eldest 19-year-old daughter. Home furniture, money and virtue all gone. An interesting look at a different side to Victorian life. From the Illustrated Police News, the 13th of October, 1888. A remarkable story. William Russell, 54, described as a waiter of Gonsalva Road, Wandsworth Road, was charged before Mr. Bridge on Monday at the Bow Street Police Court with stealing about May the 6th from 36 Stanhope Street, Clare Market, 1 feather bed, 2 iron bedsteads and paillasses, 2 armchairs, 6 Windsor chairs, 1 mahogany round table, 1 chest of drawers, the property of Michael Denworth. Mr. Langham appeared for the prisoner. The prosecutor, Michael Denworth, who is an Irish labourer and caused some amusement in the court by his excitability, said that in February he went to America to better himself. He left his family in Stanhope Street. In consequence of a letter he received, he came 3,270 miles, that's what it is by the chart on the map, your worship, to find the vagabond who had reduced his wife and children to starvation. He went to Stanhope Street, where he had left his wife with a good home and money to go on with, and the first person he saw was Mrs. Urianson, the landlady, who said, in answer to his inquiry about his wife, "God in heaven, don't mention it. The wife's starving, and the children too." Witness went with Mrs. Urianson to Doddington Grove in Battersea, and there found his wife and 5 children in an almost empty room, without a particle of food. He said, "Good God, Mary, where's the home?" She said Russell had stole it. William Russell referred to was the prisoner who, before the witness went to America, had come after his daughter Annie. Witness had turned him out of his house and asked his wife how he came to get hold of the home. His wife said she had been sent to prison for 4 months through him, and while she was in prison he went to live with the daughter Annie. Witness added, "The character of my girl has been ruined by him, your worship. He's a man who seduces young girls and gets them to go on the town. I found him, then gave him into custody. Cross-examined, my daughter Annie is still in prison." Mr. Bridge, "What was your wife in prison for?" The witness, "That is a hard thing for a man who was 3,270 miles away to say." The wife was called and said that her husband left her furniture and money. As soon as he had gone, the prisoner and her daughter Annie, who had been turned away from home, came back, and witness's life was not her own. She was sent to prison for taking the prisoner's part against a woman who asked him why he did not go back to his wife and 6 children. Regarding her daughter Annie, she said, "It wasn't for his youth or his good looks my daughter took him. He said he had £400 and 4 horses. He turned out to be a pensioner from the army on 1 shilling and 1 penny a day. He sold the things one by one and took the money my husband sent over. I had to give it to him. If I dared to open my mouth, it was a blow from him or my daughter, who was sent out into the streets by him. My daughter is only 19 years of age." Ellen, the second daughter, aged 18, said that when the prisoner came to live with them, while their father and mother were away, he used to ill-treat her sister if she did not bring money home for him. Mr. Bridge adjourned the case for a week. The prosecutor, Michael Denworth, then said the prisoner, William Russell, tried to send this girl and his 18-year-old daughter also on the streets. In his opinion, it was a case for the Society for the Prevention of Crime. Mr. Bridge said he would see that a solicitor took up the case. That concludes this episode of The Ripper Fever Spreads, the Birtley mutilation murder of 1888. The facts have been presented The tale unfolded and conclusions, however unsettling, drawn. Should dissatisfaction persist, kindly direct your grievance to the senior consultant for imaginary friend meditation. Regrettably, they are no longer available for questioning, being currently occupied in resolving disputes between delusional parties. However, for those of keen mind and sharp eye who found satisfaction in the evidence presented, your civic duty remains. Like, subscribe, and share this case with fellow investigators, armchair detectives, and those intrigued by shadows of the past. Such actions assist our ongoing engagement with the enigma known only as the algorithm, a most elusive and capricious suspect. Consider this your summons. The case continues, and your participation is, as ever, invaluable. This has been News of the Times, and I am Robin Coles, peddler of historical crime, straight from the cobbles to your parlour.